is Saturday, March 22nd. I'm Nima Naufal, and these are today's headlines. Fighting in Tripoli intensifies between supporters and opponents of President Assad, with no end in sight to the violence targeting Lebanese soldiers. U.S. Ambassador Hale returns from Washington as Salam receives a phone call from Obama congratulating him over the new cabinet's formation. And liberal and conservative countries approve a UN document to promote equality for women that reaffirms their sexual and reproductive rights. Fighting between supporters and opponents of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad in Tripoli intensified yesterday evening, with no end in sight to the violence that has increasingly targeted Lebanese soldiers. The death toll from the latest round of clashes between the city's predominantly Sunni Beit Tabbani and the mainly Alawite Jabal al-Muhsin district rose to 25, with at least 175 people wounded thus far. The army said 4 soldiers were wounded when the military responded to sources of fire, bringing the total number of wounded soldiers to 33 since the clashes began on March 13th. The army announced it had carried out raids in Kibbeh, the Hariri Project neighborhood, and Al-American Street, as well as Al-Bakar and Al-Riva streets, confiscating a number of light and heavy weapons, as well as other military equipment. Earlier in the day, a roadside bomb hit a military patrol unit in the Bahsas neighborhood, damaging a number of vehicles, according to an army statement. Prime Minister Tamam Salam received a phone call from U.S. President Barack Obama, who congratulated him over the new cabinet's formation. Obama stressed during the call on the importance of holding the presidential elections on time before the constitutional deadline. He also emphasized that the vote must take place without any foreign interference. U.S. President urged strengthening the disassociation policy, noting the importance of national unity. And the U.S. Ambassador to Lebanon, David Hale, gave a statement at the Sarai this morning after returning from Washington, D.C.
President Obama also spoke to the Prime Minister about this year's elections. Lebanon's presidential and parliamentary elections are Lebanese processes for the Lebanese to choose Lebanese leaders. The U.S. role is not to pick and choose, but to join with the international community to help ensure that the Lebanese have the opportunity to do so in accordance with their constitution, on time, and free from foreign interference. We want to help protect the process and not enable outsiders to make choices that only the Lebanese have the right to make. These will be choices that the Lebanese will be making on their own. Meanwhile, there are many urgent issues, including those spilling over from the Syrian conflict. We provide tangible support in this regard, such as more than $1 billion in recent years to the Lebanese armed forces and the internal security forces to aid them in their mission to protect all of Lebanon, including from terrorist attacks originating in Syria. And we've provided more than $340 million to help Lebanese host communities deal with the stress of refugees from Syria. Lebanon's policy of dissociation from the conflict in Syria is the right one. It's why we support and urge true adherence to the Babda Declaration and the policy of dissociation from the war in Syria. When people from Lebanon fight in Syria or on behalf of Syrians, they only bring the war and violence here to Lebanon. Dissociation works to the benefit of all Lebanese. We see the tragic consequences of not adhering to dissociation all across Lebanon, whether in Tripoli or in Arsal. There are an increasing number of reports of Syrian incursions into Lebanon's territory and of the Assad regime's actions forcing Syrians to flee into Lebanon. The United States condemns the repeated violations of Lebanon's sovereignty by Syrian forces, condemns the fighting in Tripoli, and condemns any actions that risk pulling Lebanon into the fighting that is taking place inside Syria. Our thoughts are with the residents of Tripoli, just as they are with those of Arsal and the surrounding area, and we support the recently deployed members of the LAF and the ISF in Arsal, who will work with the residents to ensure security.
Standing at the gate of a Crusader castle captured from insurgents less than 24 hours before, the Syrian army officer declared Friday that forces loyal to President Bashar al-Assad are now in control of the western half of Homs province. The securing of the area follows 3 months of gains by government forces against opposition groups and serves 2 aims: cutting rebel supply routes from Lebanon, which borders Homs, and securing a highway that connects the capital to the coast. Controlling this road is especially important for Assad, as it is used to transport chemical weapon agents to be shipped out and destroyed under an international agreement. Syrian authorities, battling a 3-year-long insurgency against Assad, blamed security problems for being months behind schedule, citing attempted attacks on convoys carrying chemical agents last month. Liberal and conservative countries alike have approved a United Nations document to promote equality for women that reaffirms the sexual and reproductive rights of all women and endorses sex education for adolescents. The 24-page final declaration, approved by consensus by the 45-member Commission on the Status of Women, expressed deep concern that overall progress towards the UN goal of gender equality and empowerment of the Commission said the feminization of poverty persists, and reaffirmed that equality for women was essential for sustained economic development. The document called for equality, empowerment, and human rights for women to be a major plank in new UN development goals expected to be adopted next year. This should also include safe and effective methods of modern contraception, emergency contraception, prevention programs for adolescent pregnancy, and safe abortion where such services are permitted by national law. Coming up next, Turkish and global social media users mock the Turkish government decision to restrict access to Twitter. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Future TV. Israeli forces have shot and killed 4 Palestinians during a raid on a home in the occupied West Bank to capture a wanted Hamas Islamist militant. Hamas supporters carried out 3 bodies through the streets of the West Bank city of Jenin, shouting slogans against Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, involved in the U.S.-brokered peace talks with Israel. Hamas, the Palestinian group that controls the Gaza Strip, does not recognize the state of Israel and opposes the negotiations. The Israeli military said its forces raided a home in a refugee camp in Jenin, where they shot and killed a Hamas militant, Hamza Abu al-Hija his name was, after he opened fire. The 3 other Palestinians were killed by Israeli forces as they confronted protesters throwing petrol bombs and rocks at them during the raid to capture al-Hija, who was 24 years old, and he was a suspect in past attacks against Israelis. In other regional news, Turkish and global media users have mocked moves by Turkey's government to restrict access to Twitter. The hashtags Twitter blocked in Turkey and Turkey blocked Twitter became the top trending topics globally, just hours after the Turkish government imposed the ban. The number of tweets from Turkey reportedly rose 138% as savvy internet users, including the country's president, Abdullah Gül, found it easy to circumvent the shutdown. The whole world is laughing at you. Hashtag Erdogan blocked Twitter, users tweeted, as dozens of images mocking the ban, including one showing Twitter birds covering the Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan's head in droppings. And all these were shared on the platform. Another popular tweet shared a poster of the Prime Minister on a Barack Obama campaign poster with the message, "Yes, we ban." Erdogan on Thursday night promised to root out and wipe out the social media platform after users published claims of corruption against him. Still making headlines around the world, Malaysia's acting transport minister says that he was informed by the Chinese government that it received new satellite images of possible debris from the missing airline. The new object was reportedly spotted about 120 kilometers away from the sightings first announced by Australia last week. The latest announcement comes as the hunt for the Malaysian Airlines flight MH370 enters its 3rd week, with the country asking the U.S. to provide undersea surveillance technology and search efforts continuing thousands of kilometers off the coast of Australia. A Royal Australian Air Force captain said no evidence of the missing plane was found on the 3rd day of the hunt for 2 large objects spotted by satellite in the southern Indian Ocean. His name was Captain Peter Moore, and he said the search aircraft achieved 100% area coverage despite poor visibility and bad weather conditions. Ukraine is hosting 2 vital allies amid Western efforts to cement Kiev's leaning away from Moscow in a Cold War-style struggle for the former Soviet nations that has already seen Russia take over Crimea. Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper will be the first leader from the G7 group of top industrialized powers to meet interim President Alexander Turchinov in Kiev since last month's fall of a pro-Kremlin regime that had ultimately rejected closer ties to the West. Turchinov starts off by hosting German Foreign Minister Frank-Walter Steinmeier, his economic power playing a decisive role in formulating Europe's response to Russian President Vladimir Putin's increasingly belligerent stance. The show of diplomatic solidarity may play an important psychological role in Kiev as it faces new rounds of pressure by Russia that include open threats to throw Ukraine's wheezing economy into convulsion by raising its gas rates and demanding colossal payments for disputed debts it could still afford.
We are already quite closely coordinated with our European partners. Obviously, the G7 meeting will be an opportunity to deepen and continue that coordination, even as we have the chance to talk about how we step up our collective support for the people and the government of Ukraine and consider the optimum disposition of the G8, G7 mechanism going forward in light of recent developments. The fact of the matter is that, in the years since the ending of the Cold War, the United States and Europe and indeed the international community have proceeded along a path where we've made clear that our interest was in more fully integrating Russia politically and economically into Europe and into indeed the fabric of the international system and the global economy. But that was predicated on an expectation that Russia would play by the rules of the road.
U.S. First Lady Michelle Obama emphasized the importance of universal rights, telling a crowd of students in Beijing that freedom of expression and religion should not be determined by one's country of birth. Obama, who is on a week-long trip to China with her daughters and mother, has sought to focus on soft issues since her arrival in Beijing on Thursday night, playing table tennis with students and touring the Forbidden City with her Chinese counterpart, Peng Liyuan. But she briefly told Political Ground in her Saturday morning speech at Peking University Stanford Center, calling for greater freedoms while refraining from calling out China by name. Her words echoed remarks made last December by U.S. Vice President Joe Biden, who told a group of American business leaders in Beijing that China will be stronger and more stable and more innovative if it respects universal human rights. And speaking of Michelle Obama, U.S. President Barack Obama appeared via satellite on daytime talk show Ellen, where TV host Ellen DeGeneres checked in on him while his wife is in Asia. The playful interview started with a list of questions provided by the First Lady, who is visiting China with her daughters. DeGeneres also mockingly apologized to Obama for breaking his social media record of the most retweets with the star-studded selfie picture at this year's Oscars. Take a look.
Are you there?
I am here.
Mr. President, Michelle said she's out of town, and she wanted to know, did you make your bed this morning?
That would be no.
No.
And, when she's out of town, things get a little slovenly around the house. Socks everywhere, shoes.
Have you eaten today, and are you taking care of yourself? Did you exercise?
I did exercise. I did eat. And I ate healthy, and I had some carrot sticks along with the potato chips.
Okay, good. It balances out. Mr. President, it has been a while since we've spoken. You look great. How are you?
I am doing great. You look wonderful also.
Well, thank you so much for saying that. You didn't have to just because I said you look good, but that was nice of you. And I don't know if you know this, but I was aiming to break your record of retweets, and I apologize for doing it, but I broke your retweet record.
I heard about that. I thought it was a pretty cheap stunt myself.
Yeah, right.
Getting a bunch of celebrities in the background.
That's the only thing I tried. That's the only thing
feeding them pizza.
Yeah. Let me mention this. I don't know if everyone heard this, but you made the most amazing comment about if they would ever get a tattoo, and I think everyone should stick to this rule. If your daughters got tattoos, that you and Michelle would also get the same tattoo in the same place, and you'd all take a family photo of all the tattoos.
That's exactly right.
And on that note, we end our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our top stories. Fighting in Tripoli intensifies between supporters and opponents of President Assad, with no end in sight to the violence targeting Lebanese soldiers. U.S. Ambassador to Lebanon, David Hale, returns from Washington, D.C. as Prime Minister Salam receives a phone call from Obama congratulating him over the new cabinet. And liberal and conservative countries approve a UN document to promote equality for women that reaffirms their sexual and reproductive rights. That wraps up this Saturday here in Future Television, live in Beirut. I'm Yumna Naufal, wishing you a good weekend. Take care.